Hello and welcome to Climbing Daily. I wanted to tell you about the latest round of Climbing Bonanza discounts on the Epic TV shop. From now until the 6th of May at midnight, we're offering 10% off all quick draws and harnesses on the Epic TV shop. Just enter the code CLIP10 at the checkout. Now today's interview is with legendary alpinist Andy Cave, and it was shot at the Kendal Mountain Film Festival and there's a bit of background noise, so apologies about that. Andy tells us about his old school mountaineering stories and has some beautiful pictures to share.
I'm Andy Cave, been climbing for, don't know, a long time, 30 years, 35, something like that, old git, but really here because there's a screening of a special film this afternoon where the French guy's climbing on the north face of Changabang, and I was part of the team that made the first ascent of the north face of Changabang 21 years ago. It's going to be a special thing because after the film we're going to have people from the first ascent of Changabang, Chris Bonington, Doug Scott, plus John Porter, another route on Changabang, and then members of the north face team that I was part of, plus some of the French guys I believe as well, so it's going to be a real kind of Changabang gathering. I think growing up as a young lad, in Barnsley, not known for its mountains, I read a lot of books and dreamed one day of going to the Alps and dreamed one day of going to the Himalayas, and the thought of going to Changabang would have been a dream come true because I read the book The Shining Mountain about the first ascent, the audacious first ascent up the west face of Changabang, and so to go there and try and climb the north face that hadn't been climbed, a futuristic line, was just brilliant. So I think Changabang is a very special mountain to British climbers, and quite a British mountain really, where different generations have gone there to try and sort of do the next big line, if you like. Basically for me it was really important for us on the mountain was to do this in alpine style. Basically very simple, no bolts, absolutely no bolts, no fixed ropes, no Sherpas, radios, any of that, very simple. Climbing really like you would in the Alps, but with a bit more food, a bit more gas, and a couple of extra layers, but very, very similar. And also when we were actually on the climb as well, to free climb as much as possible, not to use aid, to actually try and enjoy the climbing, which is difficult at altitude when the climbing's tough. The main difficulty on Changabang was the weather. We had storms every day at just over lunchtime. And so our climbing time on the face was cut short. We were there for a day, but we're only climbing for a few hours each day. And that meant that by the time we got to the summit ridge, we'd really run out of food. Actually, just before we got to the summit ridge, but we really wanted to drive onto the summit, myself and Brendan. On the descent, we had to make a decision whether to abseil the north face or to go back round on the southern side, and we decided to go around on the southern side. Steve Sustad had fallen with Mick Fowler and broken a lot of ribs, so he was in a really bad way, so we had to help with that, rescuing those guys and then going down as a 4. And the irony of course is on the easier angled part of the mountain, that's where the avalanche danger is higher because of the slope angle, and we knew there was a danger and we'd almost got ourselves out of that danger, but then we were struck by an avalanche and Brendan was swept away. So that was, life-changing really. And although it was very difficult to deal with at the time, we knew we had to sort of, if you like, after we'd looked for Brendan, was to push on and get ourselves out of this very difficult situation. To put it into context, we had to climb over essentially 2 more 6,000 metre peaks to get out of there, bearing in mind we hadn't had food for quite a while at this point, with one of our team with broken ribs who was really over it. So our job then was really to get the rest of the team out of there safe. So magnificent route, what we achieved, but obviously no mountain's worth paying that price, so inevitably that made me reassess my relationship with the mountains. I had to go back to the mountains because I'm a mountain guide, so in a way that sort of helped me go back to the mountains quicker, but no one's invincible. When you set off to the mountains and you're going off with a climbing partner, it's always important to know a little bit about them, maybe start small and build up big, know what they're like, can you really trust them, can they do the business, can they work under pressure, can you really rely on them? Inevitably, when you're young, you're very driven, and I guess there's a reason why car insurance is expensive for young people. It's probably the same thing in the mountains. I think I've always been quite meticulous, actually. I had an incident where I broke my leg when I was 18 in the mountains. Interesting story, but I think from that I realised that the danger was quite always close by, and so the pressure to make good decisions is huge. And so actually having that scrape as a young man, I think, put me in a good place. Also a mountain guide, so safety is, you're teaching safety and trying to be safe. You can go to the mountains and be lucky, I guess, if you go once or twice, but if you're going to go in, day out as a guide, you need more than luck. You need systems in place, you need courage, but you also need humility. So I guess that's what I would talk to people about, is that humility bit, and to differentiate that from humiliation. Sometimes turning back, it's not humiliation. You reframe it. It's so many things that I've tried in the Himalayas. Many of them still haven't been climbed. South ridge of Gasherbrum 4, the ridge on Annapurna 3. These are big prizes. North face of the Yoga. And I realise now that we were so far ahead trying these things, and we turned back on some of them, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I think that's what I would pass on to young people, that you need the courage, but that little bit of humility, which is sometimes the gut reaction. And I think honestly a good team, I always think I'm in a good team where I feel like I can put my hand up and say, not sure about this, what do you think? And we can have that conversation. I think if you can't have those open, trusting conversations, that's a difficult place to be. I started working as a coal miner, 16 years old. So immediately you're thrown into getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get to work on time and work in long shifts. The camaraderie, the teamwork, probably similar to a military thing, or any group of humans that are close together, builds that trust and looking out for each other. Physically, I probably was in a good place, rather than people who'd maybe come through the University Mountaineering Club. I mean, I'd done the North Face of the Eiger, age 20. Most of the big grand courses. So then 21, I was in the Himalayas doing new routes. So that's a very young age to be pioneering. And I was lucky that I fell in with some great guys, Sean Smith, Simon Yates, these guys out in the Himalayas doing new routes at such a young age. So I had this super fast track apprenticeship, if you like. And they'd climbed with people like Doug Scott and stuff. So yes, I was coming at it from a different point of view, I guess, ex-miner. But a lot of the stuff I learned was handed down through these guys who'd climbed with Boardman and Tasker, who'd climbed with Doug Scott. And I think there was this massive ethos about climbing in an alpine style. A lot of those guys that were involved maybe on those siege tactic expeditions moved to an alpine style. Chris Bonington himself, Brian Hall, all these sort of legends. Rab, of course, Rab Carrington was very much involved in the alpine style thing on Janu. And we were just trying to do the same thing. Yeah, I've worked on commercial expeditions, and it wasn't necessarily for me. I mean, I don't have anything against them. I think it's amazing that there's the framework there for relatively modest mountaineers to go to incredible places. I think that's brilliant. I wouldn't be elitist about that. I nearly went to Everest when I was 21 to try and climb the Hornbein Couloir in alpine style without oxygen. It was an ambitious project. We never got the money to do it. Back then, Everest seemed like a really magical place. Obviously now it's changed. It's so busy. It's a little bit out on its own, and I guess it's just really odd that the highest mountain in the world has, a route up it that's not that difficult if it's rigged with ropes and you have oxygen all the way along it and stuff like that. So it just is what it is. Obviously my focus is going and trying things that have never been done before. That's a different sort of thing, and generally there are no queues where I go, so I feel lucky, I guess, in a way. I'm not sure I wrote the book to pass anything on, but I guess I did in a sense. No, yeah, I think I wanted, from a climbing point of view, I thought there's probably lessons here that I can pass on and maybe help other people learn and maybe not make the same mistakes, because inevitably you do make mistakes in the mountains. So there's definitely that element, and I definitely got that out of reading other people's books. If I can learn from what I read in people's books and not make those mistakes, that's useful. There's another element as well. I think style-wise, trying to talk a little bit about how we climb, not just what we climb, how we go about it. I think that's really important to me. Try to get some of the joy of climbing, the movement over rock and ice, and the incredible special places you get to go to, the light, and I've been to so many incredible places. Also, there was an element of wanting to talk a little bit about the mining community that I came from, because I felt that it had been treated really badly. So I guess there was a little bit of a socio-political angle. And to be honest, the biggest relief with my book was hearing from miners and people that I'd worked with that they were very happy with the way I portrayed them, because that was really important to me. I was with a couple of lads that I used to work with recently, and having respect from them was, to be honest, just as important as, if you like, respect from the climbers.
There's a link down below to Andy's book, so do go and check that out. And remember that discount bonanza deal, 10% off all quick draws and harnesses on the Epic TV shop. All the details are in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.